Hey everybody, it's me, Melissa. Thanks so much for joining me once again. So today I'm going to be teaching you signs related to technology. But this is the technology that deaf people use, that they use for access, communication, and safety. So let's begin. I'm going to try to kind of sum it up from tech from the past and all the way up to current, and then you can do some research for yourself for the future. By the way, for those that don't know who I am, my name's Melissa. I'm a Coda, and you can continue to support this channel by clicking that like button or subscribe to it. And I'm not the greatest uploader, but I do periodically from time to time. So I hope to make this short, sweet, and accessible for you so it's easy practice and fun. Now, so back in the day, the very first technology, I strongly feel it was a simple paper, pen, and a car. Now, the reason for this is, now deaf people used to gather in socials at different events, at the deaf clubs, at the deaf schools, deaf sporting events, and that gathering was the one time, the one place where everybody can gather, meet old friends, meet new friends, and just allow us Coda and deaf kids to play together. Now, if not, how would deaf people to connect with each other or call their friends or their family? How would they do that? Now, typically the one thing is the whole entire family would get into a car and drive for a long time. Sometimes it was a short 20-minute drive, and sometimes it was a really far drive, an hour or two. It was crazy. Now, we would drive to a deaf friend's house. We'd park. Somebody would go knock on the door. Now, it wasn't a cute knock. Most deaf people don't just knock, because that knock wouldn't work for them. They would pound on the door and then allow those vibrations to ricochet throughout the house to let them know that somebody's at the door. Now, a lot of deaf people have dogs, and the dogs were great because they would bark to let them know that somebody's at the door, and so they can go greet them and give them a hug. Deaf culture, it typically always involves a hug with a hello. Now, if you made that 1 hour, 2 hour drive and you're pounding on their door and nobody's home, the next step you would do is you'd go to their window, look inside it. If it looks quiet, the TV's off, lights are off, it's kind of obvious that they're not home, or maybe they're sleeping and taking a nap. Now, if there's no one at the door, darn. Like, for example, my parents and other old school deaf people, they would write a letter or write a note and stick that in the door and leave it there. As it's left in the door, that way when they come home, they see that missed message and they go, oh shoot, we missed them. So now it's their turn, and they would make the drive all the way to our house, bang on the door. And, it would just kind of happen back and forth until they've connected. Now, back when I told you at the window, now in hearing culture, you cannot be creeping in a window. You would get the cops called on you. Back in the day, now there's text messaging to say I'm here, but in the kitchen, if the lights are on or if they see somebody there, they would actually open the door. It's not their door, not their house, but they'd open the door and do a big wave to get somebody's attention until they look and they're like, oh, somebody's here, and then they'd greet them. That's how they connected with friends back in the day. Later, there was the two deaf men, Robert Weinbrecht and Paul Taylor. They were both engineers. And at that time, there was no technology to communicate with each other unless they gone to the deaf clubs. They had to make some prearranged meetings to meet in restaurants, or they'd drive from house to another house to make a visit. And that was the only way that deaf people could communicate. It was awkward, but we grew up that way. We weren't really thinking it was an awkward thing. We were just going to, the deaf club. We'd go once or twice a week, and we would make arrangements in advance for the next meeting. If we were going to the movies or if we're going to go out to eat, we were always planning. Something always would come up. If somebody was sick or It was kind of awkward because if they didn't live close enough, you had to drive over to let them know, hey, I can't make it to a meeting, and so they know. But with the TTY converter, oh man. So my deaf friends who had the TTYs, there was 3 or 4 of them. They started telling their friends and their friends, and it just spread out there. Deaf people started coming to my house to see this machine and were just blown away. So it was expensive. It was $200. That was for the converter. And at that time, it was 1966, 67? And $200 was a lot of money. But there were a few more people that were just willing to pay and to buy. And then we had about 20 people for the first time, we had this deaf teletype directory. And it was a list with all the numbers. And then these 20 people became 40, and then 40 people became 100, and it kept continuing to spread. And at that time in St. Louis, it was the only city in America that had, a TTY network. Now, they invented the TTY was the most amazing thing because the TTY, well, sometimes they call it a TDD. Currently, some people, it's 2023, but in some small, rural towns and states, you'll see in the hospitals or airports, you'll still see a TTY or a TDD availability. What that does is this sign shows you that there's a TTY available to use there. Now, it's not something you pick up and talk on the phone. You'd have to put it down on the machine. Even a payphone had it. You can call with a friend to call a friend. Now, a TTY was the very first machine. The very first one was huge. It was ginormous. I was about 4 or 5, and I was little, and the machine seemed so big. To me, it looked like a ginormous refrigerator. Now, back to the TTY, or the TDD. Now, what we do is you dial the number on the phone, and you would pick up the handset, and you put it down onto the machine. And it sounded like a bunch of beeps. Now, for me, listening to it in the phone, it sounds like a Morse code. But it would go beep, 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 beep. And as they type, they'd say, hello, hello, are you there? And it'd be the next person's turn. As I would read, I can type back, yes, hello, I'm here, GA. And now that GA means, it's kind of a code for go ahead, it's your turn. Just like when hearing people have in a CB radio, they'll say, copy that, roger that. It's just kind of a time to take turns. Now, putting this handset down on the machine was great, but majority of the hearing people didn't have these machines. So now how would deaf people contact doctors or schools or jobs and people in the world? How would they do that? Most people had children like me. I'm a child of deaf adults. I was 4, maybe 5 and 6, and I would pick up the handset and I would dial these phone numbers at that young age, slowly dialing them. And I would make calls for my parents. I would call their work, for doctors, and sometimes the hearing person would hang up on me. I'm this 4-year-old little girl voice, They would think I'm prank calling. It was really frustrating. But quite honestly, I feel like Codas they were the OG interpreters, because back then we didn't really have interpreters. We had nice people, there was family members, church people who knew how to sign, or maybe signed ASL fluently. But we were the only ones in the house 24/7. Can you imagine? It wasn't always a fun experience, though, but it was definitely a part of my experience, and for that I'm very grateful. Now, with the story with the TTY, this machine that you put the phone down, you type a message, it would go to another person that has a machine, and they'd read the text. That makes me extra proud of my deaf culture, because I feel like the deaf people, they invented the original texting or instant messaging. Um, I am. So the texting back and forth, I mean, they were the first, right? So why not give them the props? Go deaf culture. Now, technology's really helped deaf people with communication, access, and safety, and that's connected with lights, a visual flashing light, so it's easy to notice. Or the second option would be like vibration, something to jolt, to feel a movement to get their attention, and so forth. And that would bring their attention to something also. The technology is connected with an alarm clock, so you would hear an alarm clock go beep, beep, beep. Now, deaf people's alarm clock has an alarm clock. I mean, the one for deaf people has a flashing light on it, so strong light. And also there's a small round gadget that you put under your mattress, and it would shake your bed, like vibrate it so you would wake up. So it's access. Hospitals and public places, you'll also see like the fire alarm option on it. So if there is a fire, there would be a light flashing on it, and that's accessible for deaf. If you show up at a deaf person's house to their door, now what would you do? Now, people just text, hey, I'm here. But back then, you get the pounding of the door experience, which I've explained, waving in the window for that eye contact, writing a note or a letter and leaving it in the door. And this one is actually a doorbell option. Now you show up, you go push the doorbell if they have this option connected, and they can't hear the doorbell, obviously, but if they have a Coda or a child who can use their ears to say, hey, mom, dad, wave them down that says somebody's at the door. Dogs are another option. Most deaf people have dogs, so if somebody shows up and they hit the doorbell, a dog would bark at the door to let them know somebody's at the door. And now if they don't have a hearing child like me, or if they don't have a dog to let them know that somebody's at the door, a lot of deaf people have a light flashing that connects with the light. So the doorbell rings, a light would flash. It's really easy to spot that. Another way for babies. Now, how do deaf parents even hear the babies when they're crying or screaming in the bedroom? Much like the doorbell, there is a light that they have set up, and when the baby cries, the light will flash. The light kind of moves at the same frequency. It matches the voice tone. Now, funny story. Now, my little brother, who's deaf himself, he was probably like 6, maybe 7, 8 months old or so. Now, he was standing in his crib, and he had figured out, I mean, seriously, this kid is so smart. He figured it out. He was standing in the crib, and he'd watch the lights flash as he used his voice. Now, my deaf parents would be out there in the living room watching a movie or TV, and he'd cry and scream and scream and scream. And my mom would see this light flashing, and the tone of the screams, she would know it's a cry. My mom would panic and go and pick up this baby, right? My brother. But later, this boy is so smart. He would get up in the crib, stand up, and look at the light and intentionally make sounds to make the light respond with him. So he'd go, hey, hey, and the lights would flicker. Now he noticed that would move when he used his voice. So he would do that, and he'd go, pretending. And he would fool my parents, and they would immediately come in, and he'd look at them and laugh. So it was cute, really, really cute. Now for hearing, a lot of deaf people use hearing aids. This is a sign for hearing aid, but not all deaf people prefer to use hearing aids. Lots of deaf people have different hearing abilities, different hearing losses. Some are really profoundly deaf, like my dad, and he's like, he does not care about hearing aids. But my mom, she's deaf, she has hearing loss, and she likes to use hearing aids to help her hear the beats more clearly. Now, hearing aids does not make anybody hearing. You need to know that. It just amplifies sounds. So now they've got these cool different color options on the ear mold or the machine. There's glow in the dark, rainbow, tie-dye options. So many different colors for a hearing aid. And years and years and years later, somebody invented the cochlear implant. Now, some people sign it with the hand-shaped 2 on the back of your head. It represents that magnet where the machine goes in. You will see this as a cochlear implant. And the third one, some people just sign CI. Now, the cochlear implant is really, it's an invasive surgery. It's definitely in the skull, and that's where they kind of hook it all up. The technology helps them hear better. It comes with a cord, and there's a machine called a processor. Now, for many, it works and successful. For many, it didn't work. So it's really a sticky and controversial topic. The debate is like, how old to give a cochlear implant? What's best? Some of my deaf friends have been upset. Why would their parents give them a cochlear implant when they were a baby? They were only 1, they were only 2. But some deaf people absolutely love it. It's a success, and it's really just depends on who the doctor's like screening and finding that best candidate. The cochlear implant's just a really sticky topic with the deaf community. Now with the technology, it's more and more mainstream. That sticky concept has kind of gotten lessened, but it really, for a minute there, it kind of divided our world. When it first started, deaf people, they're very proud of their culture. And the deaf people that got cochlear implant, they were disappointed. They felt like they were cop-outs. Just, I'm not deaf anymore. But it's not like that. Now, remember I was sharing with you about the very first interpreters, Coda children of deaf adults. Now, the kids are called Codas, Codas with a K. Now, kids of deaf adults. Or we had like family friends, that could sign. Later, we began to have the video phone. Now, a video phone, well, remember the machine I was telling you about, the TTY, right? Now, later after that, they had added it was an OK service. It was called the telerelay service. And now with this, if you were hearing and you didn't have a TTY machine, you can actually call an operator, and we call and say, hi, I need to call this certain number. And they would say, hold on. And they probably all wore headsets back then. And they'd take their phone, the other phone, and put it down on the TTY and converse and relay the conversation. It was awful from my experience. I didn't like it. The voices were monotone. There was no emotions, no expressions, like in English. Deaf people don't write in English. Sometimes they write in ASL. They typed in ASL. And the hearing relay operator, well, many of them didn't know about deaf anything. And they would speak in that order, in ASL order, and just have this reaction of like, I don't even understand what they're trying to say. Sometimes they were rude. I disliked it very much. Sometimes when I got the call from a relay operator, I will admit I've hung up sometimes. With the relay, TTY relay, later we had a video option. And now this is great. It's video screen to screen. So the video relay service was added to that. And that made life so much easier. I myself work as a VRS interpreter. And it's just so easy with the screen that comes up. The hearing caller will talk in my ear, and I could visibly see the deaf person. And I'd sign to them and communicate and interpret this conversation. It's a really awesome improvement. It's made so many deaf people's lives better and easier and more authentic. Like they really have the emotion, the expressions in their tones. Like how an interpreter would sign, sometimes I can see it would match like my mom or a character. So it would really look like my mom. Anyway, I'm very thankful for the video relay service. It's truly, I've seen it's impacted the community, communication for the deaf, my family, and for the world. And later, then we now all have access. We have FaceTime access. We all have video chat options. So again, the deaf invented that? And now let's talk about the future. I don't know. You can research on YouTube. On my page, I'll have a playlist that has different futuristic technologies or maybe stuff that's in process now. Now, for me, I'm just going to throw this out to you. I'm thinking the next move is a hologram, like a hologram light beam that is 3D. It's a real moving thing, and you could just have a signing interpreter like, "Hi, how are you?" And it's really cool. The only problem is you won't get that hug through this light hologram beam, but technology is just becoming real fascinating. It's really interesting. And you already know, like, our phone updates, they happen so quick. There's so much more other technology, like mirrors. Deaf people use mirrors in their kitchen just to kind of see who's coming up behind them, kind of like a rear view mirror. But anyway, that's all I have for you to share with you today. Let's go ahead and recap what we've just learned. TTY. Alarm. Or you could sign alarm clock. Alarm watch. Fire alarm. Doorbell lights flash. Hearing aid. Now, if they use both hearing aids, you could use 2 handshakes for 2 hearing aids. You could use this handshape or this handshape for cochlear implant. Here's that other one. Or a simple CI. Video phone, also known as the VP. It means video phone. Really, the video screen that pops up and they can see them. VRS. Now, VRS, it means video relay service. Like we had TTY relay, the receptionist with the headset, the operator service. Now we have the video relay service. The sign is the abbreviation VRS. And as an interpreter myself, I do want to let you all know, interpreters, we're not technology like that, but we're tech. Interpreters provide access on communication, and it includes safety as well. Now, my YouTube post down below is going to have a playlist of just various types of deaf futuristic technologies. So it's just really stuff I found on the internet. I just figured I'd put it all in one place for you to watch. And that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, for learning about deaf's past, present, and a link or links for the future. So thanks again. Practice your signs in the drop-down box below. I'm going to go ahead and post all the words that you learned, so you could just kind of go through this list and just make sure you know them all. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time, and as I always signed, I'm out of here. Bye.